Welcome back to the Ride and Laugh podcast. We are stoked to be here with you. If you love mountain biking, you are in the right place. Picture your last group ride, a whole bunch of buddies. You had a great time. Maybe you hit a drop, maybe you hit a jump, maybe you ran some tech, maybe you climbed a hill faster than you ever have before. The stoke's high. You're back at the parking lot. You're hanging out. You're talking bikes. You're talking tech. You're talking progression. That's what we do here every week. Ride and Laugh. Sage, Trail Sage, how are you today?
Oh man, Danny, I'm still smiling from this weekend. Like this weekend was all about what this podcast is.
Yes, man. Yes. Tell us. Well, this weekend was awesome, and it's something that was a long time in the works. I never really thought it was going to happen, but we won't keep the listener in suspense. We both, and Sage led the way on this one, but we both cleared a pretty significant feature, a really significant gap jump. I guess probably about a 15-foot. Is that what we're guessing?
Yeah. I think about 15 feet. Yeah.
And it's a more of a step down, kind of like semi jump drop. Yeah. Very gapped, very dangerous. No room for failure. And no room for really like messing up the landing either. It's a trail. It's absolutely a trail. You come in hot, and we've looked at it before. There's two lines. There's a very, very tech line that has fallen apart. But it's still techie, but it used to be really techie. And that was what we used to do. It's pretty techie getting into it. And then the actual jump itself had been recently fixed up. And Sage started talking, hey, they said that they did some work on that drop on the trail. Is called Hans Ray. And if anyone that doesn't know, Hans Ray is an iconic mountain biker known for his trials skills and just all around mountain bike badassery. So when you're naming a trail Hans Ray, it's kind of a no joke trail. In fact, Sage put together a little video of it on Trail Sage. You can go and look at it. It's one of his, is it a Sunday Shred video?
It's not labeled a Sunday Shred, but yeah, basically a Sunday Shred.
It's labeled, what's it labeled if anybody wants to see the jump?
It's labeled right now, 4 years in the making. Yeah. Yeah.
4 years in the making. Anyways, Hans Ray commented on it. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
That was cool.
But what we want to talk about today is not just gloating and being all stoked for all of you guys over hitting this feature but how this actually came to be. And Sage and I feel very strongly that it's a visualization technique, and that's what we want to talk about today. We want to teach it and reinforce it. We want to answer any questions that anyone has. rideandlaugh1@gmail.com, or if you have done similar techniques, or if you have something on your bucket list, we're going to talk about that. We're going to be writing down bucket list of things that we want to clear, whether it's something on our local trail or just something in general, or even a fitness or an FTP number you want to hit, depending on your training. So there's a ton that visualization can do for you. But let's get into that, Sage. Tell me about how you were starting to manifest this feature into existence, for your skill set.
Before I do, I want to. I think everybody has that Hans Ray moment. It might not be the exact thing that we just did, but maybe it's just a drop for you, or maybe it was a climb that you've never cleared. But like everyone, I think, has that Hans Ray moment, and that's really what this is about. But I think
the sport's about largely, right? Is progression, and if you can go out on a ride and clear something that you don't usually get, then it's just like yes. How many rides do you go on where even if it's an easier ride and there's like 3 or 4 tough spots in there, and you got 2 of them? I know I'm laying in bed at night thinking about those 2 spots. Like, that was awesome. So stoked.
And that's where it starts. It starts with visualizing that, right? So you've ridden by this, or you've tried it a bunch of times, and then this little thing just pops into your head, and you're just like, man, I think I can do this, And the think is the first part. And then actually visualizing yourself doing it is just like, it seems like such a simple thing to do. And it's like, okay. But like really thinking about all the little intricacies, of what goes into doing that. Yeah, from start to finish, and just really visualizing that through. And I think you do that better than I do, actually.
Well, I think you do it again. We've talked so much already in our first couple podcasts about your intuitiveness with this stuff. So I don't know if I planted the seed of, hey, we should visualize. I mean, I certainly do. And I was doing it before I knew it was a technique.
Yeah.
I was just doing it. Mainly I was just daydreaming or distracting myself. I at one time I was doing Pilates class at the local gym twice a week. And it's like this crazy core workout. And she would have you in these planks and side planks, for like a minute and a half, and your core's just on fire. And I would get through it by like just daydreaming about mountain bike stuff. So I would just like start thinking about features. And let me tell you, it's a great distraction. And I don't know if it's the chemistry of like the effort, putting in the effort and also visualizing at the same time. I mean, I don't know that anyone else has stumbled across that, but it seems very powerful.
Yeah.
So, but if you're working out and you're doing like some core work and you need something to think about something that you want to get on the bike. For me, that's always been really helpful. It's an odd kind of time. I don't know that you would want to do planks just to visualize.
Do you find yourself visualizing the whole thing from start to finish, or just that specific moment, or you know what I mean? Like, are you taking, if we're talking about Hans Rey, are you visualizing the whole drop in, or is it just that gap?
Yeah, I would say it's both. I mean, I'm thinking more about the gap, but I think if you really want to start getting comfortable with it, think about your mindset, think about your body position coming into it. That's really part of the success of visualization is using your senses, and the human mind can create something that we feel is real. You can do the opposite also. You can create fear. I know I've laid in bed at night thinking about features that are coming up the next day that I'm worried about, and I can't sleep because my body's now in a stressed out mode. It's scared. So, you have to be careful. You can do the same thing in the other way. If you keep thinking about something that you fell on and you keep thinking about it, then you're not putting yourself in a good position. So it goes both ways. But yeah, as far as doing the entire feature, I think that's probably a good idea, especially if the trail leading into it is a little bit gnarly, which Hans Rey is. It has a really steep slab section going into it. And then you're coming around this turn and there's a certain spot where you're letting off the brakes and getting the right speed. And I think it's a good idea to kind of lock in that entire mindset of what you feel like. Same thing with Nico's drop, which is it's another, we're talking about Hans Rey is at Mount Penn and Reading. That's stage in my favorite trail system. Absolutely great trail system with just everything you could want there. And then there's a famous jump line there of professionally built jump line called Skyline. And there's a drop that goes into it that is really, really rocky going into it. So it's hard to keep the speed and not look at the rocks and then hit the drop. It's just more of like a head game kind of feature than anything. And we've done it a million times, and I've also screwed it up a couple times. And sometimes I lose a little bit of sleep thinking about that one. But if you think about like starting at the beginning of the trail and getting into that flow state, and then as you come up to it, just keeping your speed and dropping in. So I do think that it's a good idea to visualize as much as you can.
Yeah.
What do you do?
So I don't know that I actually go into that much detail, to be honest. Yeah. When I start dreaming about a feature, right? And I'm thinking back to the two biggest ones that we most recently hit. We had that huge, really steep slab, and then obviously this Hans Rey one. And in both cases, the thought popped in my head, right? So we rode by both of these features. In both cases, we've seen people do it, And I just kind of start thinking about like, well, first of all, is it in my wheelhouse, right? That's the first question I ask myself is like, is this in my wheelhouse? And in both cases, I stepped away with that saying, yeah, it is in my wheelhouse. And in the slab case, it was so steep and so scary. I felt like I was on the cusp of it being in my wheelhouse, but I felt like I was almost there. And the difference between Hans Ray and the slab was our trip to Blue Mountain Reserve, where we had done a bunch of slabs, and that upped our confidence level. And so when I revisited that slab, I was like, you know what? Now I can actually see myself doing that slab. And with Hans Ray, we had just started kind of doing some more jumping. And then when we had watched one of our friends do it, again, the visual popped in my head. I said, you know what? I think we're ready. I think we've done enough of these gap type jumps. While we haven't done that specific one, we've done similar distances. And so that visual popped into my head, and it was a very positive image, right? It wasn't a image that was like, oh no, you know, like nervousness and like, oh no, what happens if you crash? This was a very like, I could see myself doing the actual jump, or I could see myself doing the actual slab. And I think that's really important, because when I'm at the trailhead, right, I'm at the start of that gap, that same visual, that positive visual is what's running through my head, you know? And so when I'm at the top and I'm like, okay, think, and I'm seeing myself do this. And that to me is probably the most important part of the whole process, you know, having a positive feeling about the gap jump, you know, if you, or whatever it is that you're trying to go for. If there's a negativity, that's probably a sign that you're not ready. And I don't mean like, what am I trying to say here? It's like, there's a healthy nervousness and there's a, oh no, nervousness. And I don't know how you can tell the difference except that you can feel it. You know, it's okay to be a little bit nervous and a little bit scared. That's natural. Yeah. But you have to know the difference between that no nervousness and the go nervousness.
Yeah. You have to absolutely be ready to full commit on when you start getting onto these higher consequence features. Now, obviously you want to start smaller, you know, you start visualizing, you start smaller and safer. But when you get to these, when you get to these bigger features or these higher consequence features, like a gap jump, a tabletop is different. You can land in the middle, you know. So a gap jump, there was no place to land. You have to clear the whole thing, or you don't even want to take your mind where that would go naturally. So yeah, feeling that negativity, feeling that fear, and not being able to commit is just going to be really dangerous. So it's a fine line, and it's a beautiful thing about mountain biking. It can be so many different things. It can just be like a straight fitness sport. It can be a lot of technique, and then there's these moments of progression, or it can be a high risk. It can be, I mean, it's going to be crazy high risk. What we're doing is really very, we're within our comfort zone, within our skill zone, but still high risk if something were to go wrong. Yeah. And we've talked, I did want to clarify a little bit, because we talked in the first couple of podcasts quite a bit about our injuries. Sage and I are not always injured. We've been mountain biking for a long time, and there will be injuries. If you ride all the time, there will be injuries. I really hope, if anyone's starting out or has been riding for a couple of years, or just hasn't gotten injured yet, I really hope that you don't. We don't want all these injury stories, and ours are unfortunate. And I do believe that they were really due to some ignorance. I would say each one of our crashes, some ignorance on our part, or a little bit of hubris, and not really knowing what we were doing. So, but that might be a different conversation.
I mean, that is a different conversation, but I don't know that I would go that route, to be honest with you. I think it was more not giving the, whatever it is that we got hurt on, the proper respect that it deserved, you know, and taking things too lightly. We had talked about it before, but injuries often happen on the trails that you're most familiar with, because, oh, you know, I don't need to worry about that. I've done this a million times or whatever. And that's when, you know, that's when things go wrong for me. Dan, but before we go off on that tangent, I'd love to know what you were thinking at the top of the trailhead. We had just seen Logan and Evan, who are really good riders. Evan is a pro rider, and Logan is a very accomplished mountain biker. And we watched both of these guys do this gap, the Hansray Gap, and man, they made it look so good. And suddenly it was our turn. And I want to know what were you thinking at the top?
Well, first Evan went, and Evan has so much steez and style and popped off of that thing. And I was like, well, I can't do that.
Yeah,
I can't do that. The arc in the air didn't look like anything that my bike was going to do with me on it. and there's video on Trail Stage. There's video of Evan doing it. He's actually in the thumbnail because he looks so good doing it. He's an awesome rider, awesome dude. And he's also the first person that we saw do the really steep slab. The other really hard feature on Mount Penn that we're kind of working our way back up to, and he did it, and he came in with trials moves and hopped around and got himself into the right spot, and then just casually rode down this thing. It's just there's just some riders that some guys got all the luck, and I don't want to call it luck because he's a good rider. It's an old
talented,
song. That's quoting, yeah. And then Logan did it, and really smoothly. They both did it multiple times for us, and I said, okay, that looks like something I could do. And Logan's much better at jumping and probably at riding bikes than me, but that looked familiar. And they told us the speed, and I was looking at it. And I thought, that was my first thought was, I think we can do this. But I didn't really want to. Want to because it was scary.
That's terrible.
Yeah, I was like, I think we could do this. But like, if Sage doesn't want to, I'm fine with that. But we were hanging out there for a long time. And I wasn't getting nervous because I was just talking bikes with the guys. There was 4 or 5 of us hanging out there. We were talking bikes. I was talking to Logan about the coil shock and how to set it up. And that's a different conversation on coil shocks. Very interesting experiment I'm going through right now. And Sage is just laser focused on this thing. And to the point, it's getting to the point where I was like, oh, I think he's gonna do it, which means that I might need to start paying attention here, because if Sage does it and he tells me, Danny, it's smooth, I'm doing it. It's the rules. I signed a contract, unwritten, that if Sage tells me, Danny, it's smooth, you got this, I got to do it. So no, he is. I have the utmost confidence in Sage, and vice versa. If we're like one of us, he's been doing things first recently. You have been doing things first recently, because I think I broke my face pretty good and just been a little bit hesitant. But so you're up there. And you are taking deep breaths and you're getting into the zone. And then 2 guys just wander into the bottom of the trail and start walking up the trail. Like, oh, look at that gap. That's pretty sizable. And they were super nice, but I was just like, Sage, do not go. Wait until he's I can't believe that didn't buy. So you ended up having a crowd of suddenly there was 7 people there or something. And
8 people.
Didn't bother you, right? I think it was 6 people. I don't know, but didn't bother you, and you were in your ready position for what seemed like 20 minutes. It was probably 4 or 5 minutes.
Yeah. And it was forever.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is happening. This is happening. He's going for it. You did a run in, then you went back up, and man, you made it look just butter, just so smooth, just rocked it. And then afterwards, and this is part of the visualization also, afterwards, the stoke, oh my gosh, the celebration, the emotions, all your buddies hooting and hollering, you're giving hugs and everything. When you're visualizing doing something, that's part of it. You want that feeling. You want that feeling. And you have to be careful that you're not doing something to get that feeling.
Yeah. Oh, no, right.
That you're not ready for. Right? You're like, oh, I really want to be talking about having done this later. And maybe it's on your mind for a while leading up there. I want to hit this jump. I want to hit this jump. I want to hit this jump. And if you get to it and you're not ready, respect that. There's next week. There's next week. Do not do something you're not comfortable with. But when you're visualizing, I did it. I cleared it. And then just the feeling afterwards. the feeling afterwards. Because what you want to do is raise that positive vibration. You want the high vibration. You want and that's where positive energy comes from. That's where action comes from. So that feeling of stoke is as in mountain bike world, that's the highest vibration you get, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What were your thoughts going into it? I mean, at what point? I mean, so you were 100% confident at some point. You're like, okay, now I got it.
Yeah. So
you get to 100%, or are you like living around 98% and whatever happens happens?
No, it's full commitment for me. If I'm not 100% sure, it's not happening. I've walked away from many a feature when I don't feel 100%. So that has to be part of how I feel about no matter how I felt about the visual. Once I get to that feature, I have to feel 100% like this is in my wheelhouse. I would have had to have been riding at a very high level that day. So the confidence and that had happened. We had, and it's all in the video that I posted, but we had done several features before that. This was probably the last thing that we did that day. And we had pretty good success throughout the day on all these other, like Nico's drop. You had mentioned Nico's drop. That's a significant drop. I mean, the drop itself is very easy, but the jank going into it makes it that much more difficult. And that was one I actually had to hit twice, but on that second one, I really felt good. And so we're stacking wins, right? We talked about that last week, stacking wins. And so we're stacking wins all day long. So when I got to the Hans Ray gap, that feeling was very positive for me. I was like, okay, you've been riding really good and you had this good visual. And I felt it. And I think that the trickiest thing for me wasn't the people there, because you're right. I think that would probably bother a lot of people, just having like a crowd and like having pressure, but pressure, it's one of those things. Again, I'm able to kind of just block that out like that. It just doesn't bother me because I'm not focused on that at all. The part that bothered me was I had gone through my pre-ride routine. I did this silly thing. Maybe it's not silly, but I exhale really hard. And I do that on purpose, but that's part of my routine. So I'm doing the visualization. In this case, I was actually literally talking to myself. I was like, you got this. I think I even cursed in the video, which I bleeped out, but I'm like, dude, you got this. You own this, blah, blah, blah. And I was ready to go. And all of a sudden I saw the people and I was just like, oh, I had to stop and then regroup. And that to me, that was really hard. That was really hard to I was literally just about to go off and I was like, had to hold up and then had to go through that whole process again. That was probably the most difficult thing. But getting back into that mindset, so resetting, getting back into my mindset, I was glad that I was able to kind of refocus, because a lot of times that might have just like thrown you off. And if it does, back it off and just say, forget it. But for me, I was able to recenter myself, and gosh, the thought that was going through my head, and this might be terrible too, but the thought that went through my head was, it's going to be done and over in less than a second. Like before you know it, it's going to be over. And that was actually motivational for me. It was like, no, you're not, this isn't going to be a 10-minute ordeal. This is literally going to be a second, and that was actually a positive feeling for me. Like I was like, okay, you know what to do. And it's almost like getting a shot at the doctor, and you're just like psyching. You're just like, okay, it's just gonna be a second. It's gonna be over, And maybe that's a terrible example because that's a very negative. Getting a shot is negative. But the point is, like, it's not gonna be forever. It's gonna be a second, and you're ready for this moment. And that's the feeling that I want everyone to recognize: is you're ready for this moment. Like all the hard work, everything that you've been doing was preparing you for this moment. And if you visualize it and you're feeling it, then you are ready for this moment. Commit to it and do it. And that's what I was thinking in my head. So I'm at the top of the trailhead. I go through my breathing exercise and I just say, let it go, Sage. And I just, boom.
So when it was beautiful. It was beautiful. When you're visualizing, are you also imagining the audible, what you're saying to yourself? Are you also thinking, you got this, let it go? Are you thinking things like that? Or even saying them out loud? I mean, what do you have a process that includes that?
Yeah. So if it's a feature like Hans Ray, right, where we had never done this before, it is audible. If you were next to me, you'd be able to hear me say these things.
When you're visualizing. When you're visualizing.
You mean at the top of the trailhead, or in like the daydream mode?
The daydream mode.
Daydream mode, no. The daydream mode has no audible anything. It's just literally seeing myself do this feature, and it's just a very positive, warm feeling.
Do you think adding that would make it even more powerful? If you added, as you're thinking about doing it, you got this. You got this. Yes.
I don't know. That's a great question. I've never tried that. It's never
adding another sense besides visual. Now you're adding, right, hearing. I mean, what you want to do is enter into the emotional state of where you are, so that when you get to the actual point, you're comfortable with it. You've already been there. You do have.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting
we should play with. I don't know that I do it either, but I feel like that's something we should play with. I do say things out loud, but not in specific. I do say things like, I'm good at jumping mountain bikes. I told the story before where I was in the car and I would just say, I'm good at jumping mountain bikes. I was listening to this book on manifestation, and of course, everyone's manifesting, getting a private jet or something like that. And I was like, I'm a manifest jump mountain bikes. My wife's like, why can't you manifest anything useful? Just with the bikes, all the time with the bikes. No, you didn't say that because I didn't tell her. Maybe you could manifest fixing that fence out back. It's been broken for a month. Just kidding. She would never. My wife's awesome.
No,
but
she's awesome.
So I would say, yeah, I'm good at jumping mountain bikes. I'm good at tack. I'm good at steeps. These are things that I want to be good at, and so I'm starting to say them out loud. But I just wonder if that would add a little bit more power to the visualization technique.
Yeah, I'd be curious to kind of try that out and see if that works. So, but you didn't answer my question. So when you were at the top of the trailhead, what was your process? What did you not just visualize, but like give me the whole thing? Like, how did it feel for you?
I just want to circle back to one other thing you said that I thought was really interesting. You said you empty out all the air from your lungs, and I think physiologically that slows the heart down a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think, again, that's something you do intuitively and instinctively. And I think that's a really good technique. I've tried it a few times. When I remember to do it, it does work. I was watching a Remy Metallier video. It was one of his shorts, and he was going down this ridiculous steep. And the whole time you could just hear, he wasn't breathing heavy. It was a downhill. It was just like keeping his focus and not panicking, because it was, if anyone's seen this video where he's doing that, it's a ridiculous, it's so steep. And part of the reason you could tell on video is because you can hear the tires just not hooking up. You could just hear skidding, like,
yeah.
He's right. Another level. But when I watched that, I was like, oh, I should try that on difficult tech. I should try that, really, and see what happens. If it's good, it's good enough for Remy. It's good enough for us, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you were saying, what was my thought process when I was up there? I asked you a couple questions, and the guys had given us, Logan and Evan were awesome at saying, yeah, this is the trail speed. You get to this point in the turn, and then you let go of the brakes, and that's it. And you had just done it and said that really there wasn't that much to do. Like, I didn't need to boost it or anything like that. It was really just a kind of a commitment thing. And so I just started feeling confident about it. You got this. And I trusted. And I trusted you. I trusted the universe. I trusted my skills. It just kind of settled into it. And I use that word more and more, just trust. I think I yelled down, even though I knew what you were going to say, and I knew that I had it. I think I yelled down, I got this, right? Just because I wanted to hear you say, yeah, you got this.
Yeah.
And then I went for it. And I the first time I did it, I landed I did not go quite fast enough, and I landed a little bit rear end heavy. And what our buddy Stick said was, I think you weren't going fast enough, and you actually threw the bike in front of you a little bit to land. I think that's why you landed like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I right away, I was like, I want to do it again. I can do that a little bit better. But that also gave me a little, when he said that gave me a little bit of confidence, because it's like, I could make a micro adjustment here. I didn't think about doing that.
Yeah.
I was in the air. I wasn't going quite fast enough. And my body automatically made this adjustment to land the bike safely. And it wasn't bad. It wasn't done poorly. It just wasn't quite perfect. And so I went up right away and did it again. And the second time I went faster and I hit it much smoother, and it was awesome. It was awesome. It was really fun. And it was definitely something that I didn't think for a long time, I would look at that and I was just like, no. And Sage would even say, when we saw that jump, you would even say, like, Dan, maybe you're going to do that. I'm not doing that. But by the time I was clearing a little, some more jumps, and you're like, maybe you would get this someday. And I was like, I'm not doing this, But you started talking about it and you started mentioning it. And then I saw Logan comment on Instagram post or something like that, where it came up and he was saying it was in good shape. And so I was like, I actually thought, like, I better start visualizing this. Like, because we're going to be going, and Sage is going to be possibly doing it, and I want to do it too. And so I was like, I better start visualizing this, and I did. I didn't really remember exactly what it looked like. It was kind of my visual. I think you said the same thing. My visualization was pretty rough. Oh yeah. I was visualizing, but once I got to the actual feature, I was like, "But this looks nothing like what I." It's just much bigger than I. It looked a lot better, by the way. Yeah, that's right. That was pretty eye opening. I did have like a step back moment. Was like, oh, I don't remember it being this big, but it wasn't a negative feeling. It was just like, oh, this was bigger than I thought, but it didn't deter me. I wanted to go back to something that you had just said that I think is also really important, and that was going back and cementing it in. And I didn't do this gap twice, but I did do it twice on that super steep slab that we were talking about earlier. Yes, for the same reason that you talked about. I had not felt completely in control. That's not really the right way to put it, but there was just a micro adjustment that I wanted to make. And so I think this is a technique in mountain biking that everyone should do. Like, if you didn't feel like you were completely in control, or there was a small adjustment that you felt like you could make, it's really important that you go up and you cement it, right? And cement it so that when you look back on that, you actually have a good memory, right? I mean, we talked about injury markers, but you want like success markers too, right? Yeah. So when I think about that slab, I don't want to think about like, oh, that wasn't that great. Like I barely survived. You don't want that thought. Right. Like, oh, right. I did it, but it was really scary. My adrenaline spiked, and I don't want to go anywhere near that thing again. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like, oh yeah, I just got away with one. Now that's that's happened. I've done features, and I'm like, oh, I'm not doing that again. I'm glad. Yeah. Check that one off the list, and I'm never doing it again. 100%. Yeah. But the fact that you were given that small piece of advice and immediately applied that. So now the next time you go to Hans, your memory is like a really good positive one, so cementing something in, I think, is a really, really powerful experience. And it's a technique that if you don't already do it, you should definitely do it, add it. Now, on that super steep slab that you did twice, I did once, and I did about 100 run-ins. Sage has a rule where he only does 3. Typically, I've seen you be flexible with that, but typically, if you don't get it within like 3 tries, then you say, okay, not today. And I've seen you walk away from plenty of things that just not today, and live to ride another day. And that's awesome. And that works for you. I don't have a number, much to the chagrin of people that I'm riding with sometimes, because if it's cold out, you better put a coat on, because I'm going to be here for a while working on this. I will get to a point where I'll say, okay, that's enough. It's just not happening today for sure. But on that slab, the slab is partially, it's very, 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 very steep. and has a very short landing or run out. But it's super janky coming into it. And so you get to a point where you're just like jank, jank, jank. And then you kind of get over and you have to like pedal. You have to pedal into this thing. Yeah. So you have to like pedal over a cliff. And I just kept pausing. I kept pausing, but I knew I could do it and I really wanted it. And eventually I got to the point where I did like 4 in a row where it was like, that was it, dude. That was it. You just commit. You just got to pedal. And finally I did it. And it was awesome. But I was so adrenally exhausted from all the stress of I just laid on the ground afterwards, and Sage just yells down from the top, "Hey, you want to do it again and cement it in?" And I was like, "No, let's keep riding. I am exhausted. I don't want to do it again." And for a while, I didn't want to do it again. I didn't want to do it again. I haven't done it again. But now I'm starting to think about it again. And we should take a look soon, and been visualizing it. And it's the technique that you are going to use is always going to be the same. You're always going to want to come in with confidence. You're always going to want to come in with positive affirmations and use those positive affirmations. When you're visualizing, use those positive affirmations. Get yourself in a high vibrational place. And if you want to take it even a step further into the manifestation world, is write it down. They say that writing things down makes it 75% more likely that it's going to happen. I started writing down that we were doing this podcast. Here we are. I mean, not like starting a podcast is the biggest deal in the world. There's a million of them, but kind of a big deal for us. We're both really busy, and we had this concept for a long time. And I started writing it down, and I got excited about it. And so the excitement kind of leads to it happening. So we create our own futures, and we can create our own realities in a lot of ways. I think we're much more powerful in that way, much more in control of our lives than we realize. And it's not a direct control. It's a kind of a directional control. If you're going to be bringing positive energy and positive intentions and passion, and you're going to have that energy in your life, then good things are going to happen. If you're going to be bringing negative energy and I can't do this, or I have to do this, or I don't want to do this, then you're going to be generating more negative energy. And of course your motivation's not going to be there. So a lot of it is, it doesn't even have to be spiritual. A lot of it is just scientific. If you're excited about something, then there's a much more higher chance that it's going to happen. So if you write down, so I keep a gratitude journal. You write down a couple things, and you could just, and we're going to keep mountain bike gratitude journals. I actually bought 3. They were on sale on Amazon. And right after a ride, you could write down what was just awesome and what you want to do next, something like that. And I think that I haven't done that with mountain biking. I haven't written down the features I want to do, but I do write down that I want to be awesome at riding tech, and I want to be able to clear all jumps and all drops and ride all features, and I want to be confident, and I want to have the skills to do that. And when I do have the skills, I want my mind to get out of the way so that I can do it. That's a big one, because I think we have the skills to do a lot, and whether or not our minds get in the way. So I kind of like the idea of writing it down, and then these can also be goals. These can, if you're on a trainer and you want to hit a certain FTP and you write it down, you're going to be a little bit more motivated to be more consistent on your trainer. If you have a certain time in a race or a certain time up a hill or down a hill, we can measure everything now with Strava and Trail Forks and everything like that. So write those things down. If you're a racer, it could be a certain time or maybe a finish. That's a little bit harder because you don't know how the other riders are going to be, the other racers, but just kicking butt and really feeling ready to get into it. And so if this works on the bike, then it's going to work in real life too. And you start bringing some of that confidence and flow and vibration to what you want to do in life. And how cool is that?
Yeah. Building good habits, right? And just and you know what, along with building good habits, routine, the last thing that I kind of want to bring up about, doing these big features and things that you've been envisioning, you have the skill, you've envisioned it, having a routine that you can rely on, I feel like is really important, and figure out what that is for you, and maybe you don't realize, maybe you don't realize that you have a routine. I definitely have a routine, and it starts, of course, starts with visualization, which is what we were talking about. But oftentimes when I get to the feature, I'll walk the feature and I'll go right to the edge and actually stamp my foot and throw my hands in front of me. I picked this up, and it's not an original thing from me. I picked it up from a guy, Dom Tomato, who's a parkour athlete, and he does these insane jumps where, I mean, we're talking like 20, 30 feet. Just
I never knew that. I never knew where you got that. I always wondered about that. It just appeared one day. You just started doing it.
I love it. And the way he explained it was when he stomps his foot down, that's the marker. That was the marker in the final moment. And there was something about that finality that just kind of resonated with me. And I tried it one day and it really felt good. Like I got to the edge of this. I stamped my foot down. I threw my hands out in the front, like as if I was throwing my bars of my bike out in front, like here I go, I'm going off the edge. And
it's almost like you're imprinting it in the dirt. Like, I love it. Like you're like, like it's like a mystical, like the energy. I am claiming this feature. I'm claiming this jump.
Yes. I love the way that you just said that. Like I'm sticking a flag, it's, the first man on the moon. I'm sticking the flag on the moon. I'm claiming this for, and it has that very good feeling to it. So that's step one, right? That's step one of my routine. And the next part of it is getting up to the top and going through this breathing exercise, and just like, okay, breathing. And then the next part of it is there something that I do need to be focusing on? So a lot of times I empty out my brain, but if there are things in the feature that I do have to think about, and we had talked about this before, if it's a drop, sometimes if you can't see the landing, then you want to pick a tree in the distance, right? So it's just one thing that I'll focus on. For the Hans Ray, it's unfortunately what makes Hans Ray somewhat challenging is it's off of a turn. It's not a straight run up and run out. Mm-hmm. There's actually a turn right before it. And what Logan and Evan had been telling us was the correct speed is once you get off that turn, you let go of the brakes. And so that was the one thing, that was the one thought that I kept in my head. So I go through my breathing process and I put that thought into my head. And then also realizing that once I get past that point, you let go of that thought. Right? That isn't a thought you hold on to, which sounds like a really silly thing, but learn to let go of that thought. So once I hit that corner, I let go of the brakes, and now the focus was just clear the brain, let your body do the work. And all of this to say that you need to know what that routine is, because that routine is often going to set you in the right mood, which is a funny thing to say, but like if I don't get that routine down, it will screw my run up. And that's why when those people started walking up the path, it kind of like jolted me a little bit because I have this routine and it was interrupted. But because I have that routine, I was able to get back into the zone. Yeah. Right. Yeah. But because I had that routine, I was able to get back into the zone and go for it.
Yeah. Could you take something like that into your regular life when things get stressful or your mind starts going places that, into a negativity kind of spiral, like all human beings are very much capable of and have habitual in doing? Could you know what I'm saying? Like, could you have a technique? You have a technique on the trail to get yourself into the right frame of mind, no matter what's going on in your life. You can clear your mind and get into that and get ready to do this positive thing that you want. So what about in real life, finding a technique to clear your mind so that you don't go into a dark place and that you can keep your vibration high?
Unfortunately, in real life, a lot of those techniques is not the right word, but a lot of the habitual things that I do. And I think a lot of people can relate to this, are negative things, right? When things go bad, I find myself reaching for snacks, right? I think that's one that a lot of people can relate to. Maybe alcohol is a release for you. And so maybe when things are going bad, you reach for alcohol. But, I think a lot of people have those kind of triggers. And I think what you're getting at is, can we replace some of those things with positive things? And I have not been able to achieve that very successfully. There are things that I've been trying to implement. But I think this is a better question for you. Like, I think you're really good at doing those things, of latching onto positive things that you, and even just the way that you talk about things. Like we had talked about, like, changing words around, so it's not like, what's the one that you just came up with? What's the worst that can happen? You change what's the worst that what can happen to what's the best that can happen. Like, yeah. Changing just one little word.
My wife came up with that, and it blew my mind. And every time it's a phrase that you use all the time. And every time that I think it now, well, what's the worst that could happen? Which is kind of an encouraging thing. It's like, well, I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Like, okay, that's not so bad. I can deal with this. But then when you switch it and you're thinking about something that you're a little concerned about, and you think, what's the best that could happen? And you literally don't think of the worst thing. You think of the best thing. And it's like, well, I really like that. Let me just hold that place. Let me hold that space. So that's a great one. There's different things. I talk to my kids about different things that are kind of goofy, just to raise your vibration. You could just drop and do push-ups until you can't do any, or sit-ups. The actual act of just smiling actually raises your vibration. So, like, even just like put a stupid grin on your face and then go look in the mirror and tell me you're not going to laugh at yourself a little bit. Just put a big dumb grin on your face, pound your chest like King Kong, stomp around the room, and you'll start laughing at yourself. Put on music and just start dancing like an idiot, which is the only way I know how to dance. And you'll start laughing at yourself. And suddenly you're in a different place. You've raised your vibration and kind of gotten out of that just by bringing a little bit of goofiness, a little bit of our childhood. When kids are little, they're usually always happy. It's not until the parents start saying, look, you shouldn't be running around like with no pants on doing King Kong. All right. Well, what if I wear pants? But kids are naturally just like, we're born very joyful. Yeah. And bring a little bit of that back. Why not? It's fun. And lighten up. Life doesn't need to be so serious. We don't need to get so deep into our thoughts and analyze things from every different angle. It doesn't work that way. So getting back to the visualization, I think, and being able to do that sort of thing in real life. So you're going to maybe on mountain biking, you want to write down features you want to do or things that you want to get better at, and then write down some gratitude that you have, something that you did do, and something that you feel good about. We've done mountain bike gratitude of the week on this podcast, which I think is just a great entryway into gratitude for mountain bikers. Yeah. And then something that you said that was very interesting was when you were getting ready to do the jump, you said that you do you do the breathing, you do the visualization, and then there comes a point when you let it go. You let it go. You're letting it go into the universe. And what are you doing? You're trusting the universe. You're trusting your skills. You're trusting yourself. You're confident, and you're trusting that everything's going to work out. There has to be a level of trust there. And you do the same thing in your regular life. You manifest something that you want, right? I manifest myself being wealthy, and you're doing this all the time. You're picturing your bank account, and I mean, that's a very broad one. They should be a little bit more specific. We can get into it if anyone's interested. rideandlaugh1@gmail. We can get specifically into that, or I could show you resources. But and then you let it go. You're not necessarily going to be controlling it specifically. Right. So it's not mystical, but there is a level of trust there. It's that you have on the trail when you're doing something, you're about to do a drop. Maybe you've done it 4 times before, and you have that trust. I know I can do this. But at some point, you're letting it go and you're trusting, and that same trust you bring to your real life. And now you're raising your vibration, you're smiling more, you're being a little bit goofy. And then, and I got this. Same thing right before the feature or the jump or the tech in life. I got this. Everything's going to work out. And how cool is that?
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. we can go on all night about this stuff, man. It's just so really good.
I know. Trust skills, trust life. Yeah. It's beautiful. It's really cool. Yeah. It's really cool. I love the synergy between mountain biking and life and trust and just the universe just being a good place. If we want it to be a good place, there's a lot of stuff you could focus on that's not good, of course. Yeah. But man, forget all that stuff. What's the best that could happen?
That's right. What's the best that can happen?
Yeah. Gratitude, my mountain bike gratitude for the week, real fast because we're going late. It's just the bike industry. I have some new bikes right now, and we could talk about those later. But they're awesome. And I was looking through the Mountain Bike Action buyer's guide, and there are so many bikes. There's so many brands I've never heard of. Just small boutique brands, and there's the major brands, and there's just modern geometry and different travel, and the enduro bikes you can ride uphill now, and the XC bikes you can ride downhill. Like there's so many bikes that are just awesome out there, and the bike industry is really cool right now. When we were riding bikes in the 90s, they were garbage. Yeah, so again, different podcast, but so that's what I was going to say for some gratitude. Sage, anything to add before we sign off for this week? I love this conversation. I could talk about this all day. I think you could too. Yeah,
let me gratitude and tip, but gratitude, man, Logan and Evan, that gap jump doesn't happen without Logan and Evan. And yeah, totally. And, I can't.
And they were so patient. They were so patient with us. Sorry to interrupt, but they hung out with us. And Roman also, who was poor Roman wasn't doing the jump and just had to watch it. But that was probably a half an hour, right?
Yep. Yeah. And
I mean, they were so patient and so cool. And that's mountain bike community. I love it. I love the mountain bike community. And they were they want it's how good does it feel when you see a friend send something? You know, right. It's almost as good as doing it yourself. Maybe sometimes even better.
Yeah, really. I mean, just look at the reaction. If you watch the video and you just the reaction of because everyone's been there, everyone's had that Hans Ray moment, you know, and they all knew what that felt like. And so even though they didn't do the jump, I did the jump. They knew what that felt like, and the high fives and the fist bumps and the hugging but yeah, I'm so grateful for Logan and Evan being there and giving me the courage and inspiration to make that happen, because I'm going through some stuff in my life right now. And that was a win that I needed. And I can't thank them enough. For my mountain bike tip for this show, routine. Find, if you don't have a routine, find one. And there's nothing, what's the saying? It's a great artist, good artists borrow, great artists steal. If you find something that you see somebody else doing and you think that's going to work, try it. Just build a routine, find something that works, and it's going to make a world of difference for your riding. I promise you that. So that's my tip of the week. And just to kind of close this all out, I'd love to know, I'd like people to share their Hans Ray moment. So ride and laugh, 1gmail.com. Please tell us about your Hans Ray moment.
Yes. Let's hear some Hans Ray moments. Let's hear some moments that you got through. Let's hear some of your visualization techniques. If anybody's keeping a journal and had success with that, or other techniques, let's hear them. Let's try them. We're all part of the mountain bike community. Mountain bikers are awesome people. When you're on a trail and you ride past a mountain biker with a flat tire, or if you have a flat tire, usually there's like a dozen people that I ask if you need help. And same thing with the features. Like, you know, it's just so cool. And so let's have that community here. You can comment on the YouTube channel if you're watching there, or if you want to log in there, and certainly send us an email. We would love to talk about some listener feedback on the upcoming shows. So ride and laugh 1@gmail.com. If you're still listening, you are absolutely one of us. You're a mountain biker. You're stoked. You're progressing. You're having fun. Hopefully a little bit of laughs. Please like and subscribe on YouTube. Please subscribe on your podcast player. Please give us a 5-star review. Everything helps the algorithm, gets more people listening, more people progressing, more people riding. Have a great week. Go out, ride your bikes, ride and laugh.
See you, everybody.